Hey riders, welcome to another video in our adventure motorcycle training series. I'm Eric Lang with Ride Adventures. I've been guiding and riding motorcycle tours around the world for over 10 years now, and today we're going to answer the very important question, when or why should you stand while riding your adventure bike? Let's get started. So multiple training academies for adventure riding have popped up over recent years, and a lot of them are doing really great things to help riders enhance their skill set, ride more confidently, safely, and therefore just enjoy the entire experience a lot more. But some of these academies appear to also be telling people that it's a hard and fast rule that if you are off pavement, you're supposed to be on your feet. And it's unfortunate that I keep hearing this over and over, because the result is, as a tour guide out there with our customers, I see a lot of exhaustion. At the end of the day, you know, we have multiple days sometimes back to back in places like Patagonia where we're riding the dirt the whole day basically, except for about 10%. And so these people are exhausted because they're on their feet all the time, because that's how they were taught to ride. They were told that when you're off pavement, you're on their feet. When I ask them, why don't you at least sit down and relax a little bit, save your energy, they feel like that because they were forced and learned or trained to always be on their feet, that they can't even sit comfortably and feel safe while riding in the gravel. They have to stand. So again, this is exhausting to people after a long day, multiple days back to back. I really wonder if some of these instructors have ever been to parts of the world where you have multiple days in a row like that, where you don't really have the option to ride pavement. So as you maybe can tell, I'm a little bit passionate about this subject because, again, riding safety and how we progress on our tours with our customers is ultimately very important to the tour operator. But in the sense that your riding training and your skill set is largely supposed to be built around not only your ability to accomplish and cover varying terrains and whatnot and handle different situations, your technique and your choices of sitting and standing, it's also about energy conservation. So on these long trips, don't burn yourself out by standing the entire time that you're on the dirt when it's completely unnecessary in some situations. So let's talk about basically 5 reasons why you definitely would want to stand on your bike. And the first one being here, as we're up on the center stand, is that if you're in technical terrain, rocks and whatever, and you're in a slow situation, it might actually help to have a better angle to look down at the terrain that you're trying to cover. It could be ruts, it could be logs, whatever, but instead of being seated like this, by actually standing, you've improved your angle to see what's ahead, and that's one good reason to stand. Another reason to stand on the bike is going to be that you can establish some feeling of balance and neutrality instead of being fixed and locked to the bike and then subject to any accidental rocks or things that you might hit, things that could jar you and throw you off balance. You can feel sort of an athletic stance and a position of agility and neutrality in that standing position, again, versus having your legs wrapped around the seat and the fuel tank like that. So there's definitely agility that comes in the standing position. Standing also adds suspension in effect to your motorcycle. So your own body weight and that of your luggage, depending on the speed that you're traveling at, you could be in a position where you're maximizing the suspension travel and capabilities of your motorcycle. And that, we don't need to explain, is a definitely dangerous situation if you've ever cased the bike out like that, if you've ever actually bottomed out. You don't want that. So if you're maybe going too fast, or if the situation calls for standing, you can effectively absorb some of those impacts. And this also plays in the comfort as well too, right? If you're in truly bumpy, inconsistent terrain, sitting on that, your tailbone after a while is going to get pretty sore. So you're giving your butt and your body basically a little bit of a relief by being in that standing position. Another reason to stand would be that it's just simply nice to stretch your legs every once in a while. I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but a long day in a sort of a fixed riding position like that, to me it's actually not unlike sitting on an airplane in that fixed position with your knees not bent. I think it's got something to do with the vibrations coming through the cartilage and the fluids in your knees maybe disappearing, but it can turn into quite a leg and knee ache. So every once in a while, standing up and just using those leg muscles and getting some blood flow through the knees and everything like that, again, can just make for a reduction in your leg pains and your comfort. Good to keep your legs ready to go too, just in case, because while riding, you never know when there's going to be a situation. Maybe an animal jumps out in front of you, car, something else goes wrong. Having your legs and your muscles ready to go in an instant, in a moment's notice, could come in handy. So instead, again, instead of having them cold and stiff from sitting so long like that, stretching your legs every once in a while is a good thing. And then one last reason to stand that I can think of is to cool off every once in a while. If you're in a hot situation, you've got maybe a bigger windscreen than this, big bike, not a lot of airflow. Sometimes on a hot summer day, it's just nice to stand up, increase that airflow around you, cool off a little bit, feels better. You know, those are 5 basic reasons why you would want to stand on a bike. But now for the reasons that you definitely don't want to stand, and the reason you should learn to be able to ride dirt in the seated position. And the first would be actually a contradiction of what I already said, is that yes, in the standing position, you can achieve sort of balance and neutrality over the bike, but this can actually work against you sometimes too if you hit the wrong little rock or the wrong rut just wrong, and now you don't have your balance properly centered over the bike. Of course, you can be in a position to fall off or away from the bike, or just have everything get out of order. So balance and neutrality, again, kind of depends on the situation, but it's not always a good thing. Sometimes it's better just to be on the bike like that, sort of gripping the tank and the seat with your legs like that, and sort of feeling connected to the bike like that. And another factor to consider is your control over the handlebars. So here we are in almost a bench press situation. You're very strong, using your pectoral muscles, your triceps. You have good control over those handlebars. Now get yourself up into the standing position. I don't know what to say about that, but this to me does not feel like a lot of control. You basically don't have the kind of upper arm and shoulder strength that you do once in this standing position as you do when you're in the seated position. So something to consider there. And that actually ties in as well to your control over your hand levers, your foot controls as well. So you can adjust, and you should adjust all of your levers and everything properly so that you can sort of be appropriate for your average amount of usage in the standing or seated position. But similar to what I said about the control of the handlebars themselves, your ability to control these levers is much, much greater in a natural seated, direct in line with those levers situation, and being able to rest your foot properly on the foot pegs and control those foot pedals. If you're actually standing like this now, it's just a bit more of an awkward angle with your wrists and with your fingers. It's not going to be as easy to have deft, perfect, timely control over all of these features or these controls on the bike. Another reason you might not want to be in a standing position on the bike is sort of as mentioned before. What if there is a need to jump off the bike, right? We've all talked about or heard about somebody who did the Superman, right? You have to get off the bike because the animal ran out in front of you or whatever the case is. Well, guess what? If you're already standing, it's that split second longer it's going to take you to get off and away from the bike, because what do you have to do before you can jump? You have to sit or at least squat down a little bit. So if you're already standing, guess what? I can't jump in this position. But if you were already in that seated position, it's that split second, that little bit of time that might make the difference of you being able to get off and away from your bike and avoid a worse injury than otherwise might happen. So another thing to consider is the detriment of being in the standing position is, again, if an animal runs out in front of you or something like that, you can hit the brakes, but you better sit down first. And so again, that's that split second where you're going to need to sit down before you can properly apply brake pressure and come to a stop and avoid hitting that animal. So again, one more reason, if it's just simple, smooth, flat gravel, why do you need to be standing in the first place? It actually just happened to me on our last Patagonia tour that I was guiding. I admit I was in the standing position, stretching my legs a little bit on a back little gravel road, and sort of looking off to the side, I did notice that the sheep down in the ditch jumped out in front of me, and there was that split second there where I was able to pull it off. I hit the brakes, but I did have to sit down first in order to stop the bike and avoid hitting the animals ahead. So again, some of motorcycle riding and a lot of what we're doing here is that split second of timing. Very important to be able to stop as fast as you can. And a final important reason to be in the seated position and not always be standing would be that ability to tap and touch your feet to the ground, dabbing if you'll call it. Technical terrain, certain turns, power slides coming out, little mistakes can happen, and at low speeds you can definitely correct yourself by planting a foot and just giving that little extra 40 or 50 pounds of balance to get yourself back up into the position that you want to be on the bike. It's obviously not something you're going to do in 5th and 6th gear too often, tapping your feet, but especially at lower speeds. Guess what? If you were in the standing position, you can't quite reach the ground when you're already up there on the foot pegs like that. You need to be in the seated position in order to tap your feet. So I guess the underlying message here is with regards to standing while you're riding is take everything that you learn from these training academies with a grain of salt. Don't take an instructor's instructions, if you will, to automatically stand in the dirt as the hard and fast rule, such again to the point that you don't learn how to ride and sit comfortably when it's simple flat gravel terrain. Yes, it's off-road, but unless you have a need to have your suspension enhanced by having your legs bending like that, there's no reason on flat simple gravel terrain that you need to stand at all. And there are the negatives, the downsides to standing, like I said. So again, trust your own instincts. Riding a motorcycle is a constantly changing dynamic situation. No two situations will ever be exactly the same, and so that these rules to always stand, for example, just really don't apply across the board. Trust your instincts. You'll be a better, safer rider for it. Learn what others are saying, but go with your own instincts first. So hope this information helps you. We've got lots more videos coming up in our adventure motorcycle training series. Be sure to like and subscribe. Share this if you got someone you care about, somebody that's struggling, somebody that's looking to enhance their endurance and their ability to go further and enjoy longer trips. Share this and let's get it out there, and ask questions in the comments section if you have them, and we look forward to seeing you out there riding safely and smiling.